Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Behind the Slate Presents. That's your cue. That's your cue. That's your cue. Yes. Yes, thank you all for coming out tonight. My name is Aaron Strand, and I'm so excited to be here at Cine, one of my favorite theaters in the entire world. Man, we are so lucky to have Cine here. And y'all, it's spooky season, right? It's spooky season. It's finally here. It's finally here. Although it kind of feels like it's spooky season all year round these days. But that's a whole other story. Let's focus on the spooky season where we get to enjoy the spookiness. Yes, thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. And because you all love spooky season, I don't know if you know this, but here at Behind the Slate, we are also doing a second screening at Cine this month. Obviously, we're here tonight doing Possession. We'll be back on October 30th with John Carpenter's The Thing. Yes. Yes, and I'm announcing here tonight that at that screening of The Thing, we'll also be hosting a horror film costume contest. So if you want to come out, if you want to dust off your rumpus looks, come out dressed up as your favorite horror character. We will be doing a little costume contest. You can win yourself some money, maybe some prizes, and then obviously we're going to watch a badass movie. So how does that sound? Sound good? All right, good. Now, if you've never been to a Behind the Slate show before, I'm going to be doing these monthly from now on here at Cine. The way this works is I get up here and I give a little historical context for the film. Obviously, this is because we know that art is not made or received in a vacuum. This is not about spoilers. It's about setting the stage. We're then going to watch the movie, and then for those who can stick around after the show, we're going to open it up to an audience discussion. I'm going to hand over the microphone to you. I want to hear your thoughts, your feelings, your hottest takes. Tonight, it might be a bit of a therapy session. Who knows? You're going to want to stick around actually for tonight, especially because I'll be talking giving way more details about the production of this film. So be sure to stick around for that. Last but not least, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone who made this show possible. Obviously, we want to shout out Cine. Yes. Guys, y'all, I said it before, we are so lucky to have this space to come and enjoy this art form, to get together, to meet each other, to meet your friends, meet your loved ones, meet fellow cinephiles, and connect in real life. These spaces are disappearing. We have to fight for them, and we are lucky that this is standing here today. Now, on top of that, we also got to thank this whole crew that's helping this show be possible. We got Abby, we got Mal, we got Connor. Show them some love. Show them some love on the cams. This is a live podcast. We will be releasing all the audio and video from tonight's show on YouTube the following week and on the podcast feed and lots of clips on social media. You can follow us to check all that out. And then, of course, I got to give a shout out to the fabulous Blair Mars, lobby correspondent Blair Mars. This girl is hilarious. If you have not spoken to her, she's going to be hanging out in the lobby after the show. I would strongly suggest you hang out, get yourself a drink. Tell Blair what you thought about the movie. Maybe ask a stranger what they thought about the movie. And while you do it, you can also maybe check out our new merch that's hanging out in the back so that while you're mingling with your fellow cinephiles, you can look dope while you do it. Just saying. Just a thought. Anyway, tonight we are watching one of the most bizarre, haunting, and yet deeply relatable films that has ever been made. Anybody can make a movie that's weird for the sake of being weird. I'm sure there's plenty of Grady students here that could attest to that. But it takes real skill to make a movie that is simultaneously completely alien and deeply human. And that is what is achieved tonight with this film, Possession. Show of hands, who here has not seen this movie before? All right. Is anybody selling some Xanax? No, don't answer that. Don't answer that. Just go to the bathroom and give the signal. This movie, I have worked so hard to try to think about how to set the stage for this movie. You know, if most films operate in 1 or 2 dimensions, and a great film operates on 3 dimensions, this film is like one of those weird animations of like a 5-dimensional object rotating. Have you ever seen one of these? Where it looks like it moves it moves like not to the laws of physics, and you would almost discount it as like total bullshit if there wasn't somebody telling you that like, no, this is how it really works. That's how I think about this movie. Now, there's no understanding Possession, but we can understand where this movie came from. And to do that, we got to talk about its creator, Andrzej Żuławski, and the legacy of Polish cinema that this movie takes place in. Okay, Żuławski, I'm going to use a quote of his to set this off. He said, quote, "I was born from an apocalypse. I was born in Lviv, a city in Poland in 1940. My sister died from hunger, and my mother and my father were the only surviving people from a huge family. For me, everything begins with an apocalypse." Cheery guy. If you could choose any place and time for yourself to be born, Lviv in 1940 might be the bottom of the list. This is a city that was in Poland. Now it's in Ukraine. This was the year before the Nazis invaded. This is the dead center of the area that is commonly referred to as the Bloodlands of Europe. This vast swath of Poland, Ukraine, and Belarus that over the course of the 20th century were subjugated to unfathomable horrors through multiple wars, pogroms, massacres, and atrocities at a scale and frequency that it is impossible to wrap our minds around. Now, Żuławski's experience, unfortunately, was not unique, and the Polish national identity was shaped by this collective trauma that went into their cinema. Now, I love Polish movies. I really, really, really do. They are at times stark and also excessive, and sometimes they're stark and excessive in the same moment. They're very alien to American audiences, and yet they're so human, they're almost more than human. They're hyper-human. I can't help but, when I watch a Polish film, I think, this is just like ours, only more so. Now, the history of Polish cinema, the post-war Polish cinema, really begins in the late 40s with the founding of the Polish Film School at a city called Łódź. By the mid-1950s, this university was one of the most free-thinking and liberal places in the entire Eastern Bloc. And all they did was churn out absolute goats. Okay? This is the place where they trained Andrzej Wajda, Jerzy Skolimowski, Krzysztof Kieslowski, Roman Polanski, and a whole bunch of other Polish names that I can't even pronounce. All masters of their craft. It's absolutely incredible. I can't think of any institution that was churning out this level of greatness in such a small period of time. Now, Andrzej Żuławski, he belongs within this canon of filmmakers, but if we were to look at the pantheon of Polish filmmakers, he's like the weird kid. He's like the weird kid from another school. You know, he's got a little dark, he's a little morose. When you get to know him, he's kind of funny, but, it's his outsiderness that both inspires and tortures him. See, Żuławski's dad became a diplomat, so he grew up moving around Europe. He did not go to the Polish Film School of Łódź. He instead trained in Paris at the Sorbonne. But he goes back to Poland despite being a staunch anti-communist, and he becomes an apprentice under the great filmmaker Andrzej Wajda. Now, in 1968, revolution is sweeping across Europe, all these student protests, and Poland was not immune. There was huge student protests against the communist government. The response was swift and brutal. Polish government cracked down on dissent. They essentially clamped down on censorship for all cinema, and their anti-Semitic purges basically destroyed the Polish Film School at Łódź. Now, if you could describe Żuławski's artistic persona in any one word, it's that he's a habitual line stepper. So it is very fitting that in this environment, he decides to make his first film. And anytime you lay a line down, he's going to step on it. So he goes in, while all the other great Polish filmmakers are retreating into this sort of stark Soviet realism, Żuławski comes out with this absolutely bonkers film that is a psychological horror drama, just totally crazy movie called The Third Part of Night. And it's all about the Nazi occupation of Lviv, based on his father's experience. This movie was so nuts, but it has two features that would follow Żuławski throughout his career. Number one, very dynamic, almost surrealist camera work, which you will see in this film, and larger-than-life acting performances, which you will certainly see in this film. One of those actors was a young woman named Polish names, y'all. His name was Małgorzata Brałek. I'm sure I pronounced that absolutely perfectly. And they fell in love, and they got married, and they had a little baby. I know. It was so sweet. Now, it was a shock to everybody, but the third part of Night came out and was wildly successful in Poland. So, Żuławski decides to up the ante. He goes in for his second film. Now, if you thought the third part of Night was just testing the waters, his second film, The Devil, absolutely set them on fire. This movie is fucking crazy. It is a horror, psychological trauma period piece that's filled with sex, violence, and nuns, sometimes all at the same time. I'll let your imagination run wild with that. He brings it to the sinners. To the sinners. Wow, Freudian slip there. He brings it to the censors, and they're like, that's going to be a no from me, dog. They ban this movie outright. It would not be released until 1987. So, Żuławski's understandably disappointed. He decides to leave his wife and child and go to France, where he makes a third film, the most important thing, love. This was a more commercial movie in France. It actually does very, very well. Now, at this point, Poland is experiencing a terrible brain drain. And so when he goes and makes this great movie in France, the Polish authorities getting back in touch with him and say, hey, remember how we banned your movie? Yeah, let's bygones be bygones. Come on back. We'll pay for whatever movie you want to do. So he comes back to his homeland, only to discover a disaster at home. His wife is cheating on him with an older pseudo-intellectual guy that's very interested in Eastern mysticism, who you will see represented in this film. She has decided to take a break from acting and study Zen Buddhism, and she asks for a divorce. And Żuławski absolutely crumbles. They enter into this incredibly acrimonious separation, but in the end, Brauek leaves him and takes their son with him. He is so devastated. He pours himself into this next film, this film that the Polish government is going to pay for. And if you thought the previous two movies were crazy, wait till you see this movie. This is his sci-fi epic called On the Silver Globe. This movie is so nuts. It is like a bad acid trip that combines Tarkovsky with Fantastic Planet. He shoots this motherfucker out in the Gobi Desert. He's out there for 2 years. It's a total Francis Ford Coppola Apocalypse Now, Heart of Darkness situation where he's trying to discover the movie in real time. The budget is skyrocketing. Well, finally, a new minister of culture comes to power in Poland, sees this crazy movie being made out in the Gobi Desert, and says, we got to put a stop to this. So with 80% of the movie filmed, the Polish government shuts it down. And they don't just shut it down. They demand that all the footage, all the props, and all the costumes are destroyed. Żuławski and his crewmen literally have to smuggle the surviving print out of the country just to save whatever shreds of this movie they can. It is finally finished in an incomplete form in 1988. So here we are, 1977. Żuławski is a broken man. He has no family. He has had 2 films destroyed by the Polish government. He is trapped in a country that is facing a military, that is in the state of a military dictatorship, and he is banned from making movies in that country. It is at this point that he gets a mysterious offer from a guy named Christian Ferry. Christian Ferry is the head, I know, isn't that, I'm glad someone laughed, yeah. It never occurred to me that was a hilarious name. Yes, Christian Ferry contacts him. Christian Ferry was actually the head of Paramount Studios in France. And he gives him this offer. He says, there's urgent film work in New York City. We need you to leave right away. And so within only 24 hours, he packs up his entire life. He's given a passport by the Polish government and takes a plane to New York City. He gets there only to discover that the offer was fake. There was no movie. Christian Ferry created this whole thing to get Żuławski out of the country and give him another chance to make a movie in the West. And so, in a drab New York City apartment, he starts writing a script that would combine every genre he could think of, from horror to thriller to mystery to spy thriller to body horror to camp to slapstick, everything he can, and it would eventually go on to become Possession. Now, if you thought that story was crazy, you're going to want to stick around after the film because I'm going to go into all the crazy details of how this movie was made. And keep in mind, it was made with a Polish director in an American-funded English-language production that was shot in West Berlin with an actress from France, an actor from New Zealand, a special effects guru from Italy, and 15 alcoholic Yugoslavian stuntmen. You're not going to want to miss that. But for now, sit back. I wouldn't say relax. Let's just all take a deep breath and prepare ourselves for possession. We got oh, there we go. There we go. Yes. Let's all take a deep breath. Well, if you have to take off, thank you so much for coming. I hope you come back out soon. For those of you guys who are sticking around, yes. For those of you guys who are sticking around, I'm going to come down from all that, a little levity, a little thing that I like to call low letterboxed reviews. The good people of Letterboxd have this to say: half a star. I have so many questions. Number one being, who names their kid Bob? Half a star. I don't care if it gets better later on in the movie. I don't care. It's shit from a butt. I'm not finishing it. Half a star. Someone get this girl some fucking Xanax. Half a star. Nah, another shitty movie rated 8 out of 10. It's literally all just never-ending screams and people running around. Why are Europeans so boring and unhinged? Half a star. I'm gonna be real. I watched this on my laptop while I was playing Fortnite on my TV, and thank God, because I might not have made it through the entire film if all my attention had been dedicated to it. Oh, God, I pray for this generation. Okay, well, that was fun. Does anyone have some first reactions? Anyone want to just share what is off the top of their dome with that one? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Here, I'm going to be running around with the microphone here. Yes. What'd you think?
I can't tell if that movie was brilliant and I'm just stupid, or that movie was stupid and I'm brilliant. It's one of the two.
That is a perfect summation of this movie. Yes, down here.
So, okay, the creature, the Sam Neill creature also had, like, green eyes. Are we to understand the teacher is also some kind of... Does anyone know what I'm saying? Is there something going on there? Something? But a lot of threads kind of come to nothing, right? Anybody with me?
Well, let's circle back on that. We'll get to that. The Sam Neill creature is supposed to have green eyes. In fact, this is one of Żuławski's many gripes about this film, and one of his many griefs with cinematographer Bruno Knighton is that the eyes weren't fucking green enough. And he fucking hates him for not making the eyes green enough. Okay, let me start off by just giving a little backstory about this. So he's living in this New York apartment. He's pouring his, all of his thoughts into this script, really channeling his divorce here. And you might ask yourself, how does a movie like this get made? Reasonable thought. Well, the truth is that Żuławski actually got a meeting with the head of Paramount Studios, this Austrian industrialist who had built up Gulf Western Company, bought Paramount, became one of the most important men in Hollywood, Charles Bluhdorn. He sat down with Bluhdorn, and Bluhdorn says, "What are you working on?" He says, "I got this new movie, Possession." He says, "What's it about?" He said, "It's about a woman that fucks with an octopus." And Bluhdorn said, "Great. Let's make it." Okay, answer me this. What genre was this film? Any thoughts? Any thoughts? Yes, over here?
All of them.
All of the genres. All of the genres. Yes, it was all of the genres. I would be inclined to, I'd probably, if I was to like film nerd classify it, I'd probably say this exists more in the world of thriller. But I do think that the most important element, and the thing I wanted to highlight at the beginning of here, is the element of mystery in the first half. It is suggested through Mark. Mark believes that he can figure out what's going on with Anna, right? The entire first half of the film is him trying to decipher what is going on with his wife. Therefore, we as an audience also believe that there is something to decipher. There is something to be figured out. In a way, there is a way to intellectually possess his wife. Once he gets to the core of the mystery, the thing that sets this film apart from all the others, is that once he solves the mystery, the film then jumps into this transcendent, nonsensical level. It leaves the realm of the corporeal and goes to a whole other world that we can never fully understand. Now, I want to ask a question, and this is for the ladies in the audience, the ladies that have stuck around with me all night. Ladies, how do you feel about Anna? Yes.
At first, I was like, okay. I was like, she's totally in the wrong for cheating. She shouldn't have cheated on that man. And then he started beating on her, and I was like, okay, I gotta support her. And then she started doing fucked up shit in that fucked up little apartment, and I was like, okay, now I feel bad for the man. And then they both just got hella crazy, and I support nobody in the situation except that child. I'm not even so sure how I feel about that teacher at the very last scene. I'm like, I don't even know.
Wonderful. Submit that to Wikipedia. That was a great plot synopsis. That was great. Anybody else? Anybody else? Let me talk a little bit about some of the backstory here. And this is stuff that, like, I purposely did not incorporate into the opening monologue because it does make this movie harder to watch. So, Żuławski, Isabella Adjani was Żuławski's first choice for this film. He approached her. She said no. He approached her again. She said no again. He auditions a bunch of other actresses, and then he does something pretty crafty, to put it lightly. So basically, he found out that she was having, her lover was cinematographer Bruno Knighton. So he goes and hires Bruno Knighton and gets him involved with the film. And he tells him, yo, my dream role is Isabella Adjani. Knighton goes back, he says, well, hold on, let me get back to you on that. Knighton convinces Adjani to take part in the film so that, hey, babe, we could make a movie together. Wouldn't this be great? Well, as soon as they get on set, Żuławski basically relegates Knighton into the role of a gaffer. He takes his Polish cinematographer, essentially puts him in the role of cinematographer, which led to all sorts of tension on set. Adjani was... This sort of behavior continued with Adjani throughout. She described this film as, quote, a nightmare, a trauma that I would never do again. She later described the film as emotional pornography. Żuławski dragged Isabella Adjani through the mud doing this. Now, Żuławski low-key kind of brags about a lot of this stuff. He really, it's borderline abusive what he did. He talks about Adjani faking a suicide attempt while filming. Now, he also openly brags about learning from the Polish theater director Jerzy Grotowski how to put actors into a trance state so that they don't remember what they're doing during a take. Many people have suggested that this was the state that Adjani was in when she's performing the miscarriage scene in the U-Bahn. Adjani actually states that one scene is the most freedom she ever got on set, and that Żuławski's only direction to her was, fuck the air. And she took it from there. Żuławski also bullied Sam Neill. He and Adjani convinced Sam Neill to actually hit her during that scene, after which Sam Neill went into a stairwell and cried, because if Żuławski found him, he was afraid that he would call him feeble. Adjani, of course, would go on to great acclaim for this role. However, she would never work with Żuławski again. So again, follow-up question for the ladies, if they would like to answer. Is this film misogynistic, or is this film about misogyny? In the back, feeling brave. I love it. Okay, what's the comment?
As soon as you said, thank you. As soon as you said, is this movie misogynistic? Of course, because like the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, man, this guy really doesn't like women. Anyway. But then you said about misogyny, and that is making me think. So that's my thought right now. No answer.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a right answer. Anybody else? Yes.
Honestly, I think the film is about female desire, and I don't think it's misogynistic at all. I kind of struggled reading the film. This time, I think it's my second time watching it, but This time I felt like the monster in the apartment was the metaphor for the desire that Isabella Gianni's character had. And I think she struggles with finding like the true, like struggles with finding love and kind of stilling that thirst that she has. And she can only like fulfill that with having sex with the kind of monster.
I was just thinking that I don't think it was maliciously misogynistic, as most things are. It's like, I don't think he had a good way to get out how angry he was at his actual like wife in that situation, and it turned into something really misogynistic and awful and really beautiful at the same time, which is a really weird duality.
Yeah, absolutely. Adding in here.
My wife asked me if he hates women, the director, and I called back to like, well, he hates that he went through that, but he clearly feels strongly about them, this character, and I'm not sure exactly what he feels, but he feels very strongly. But there's some empathy towards Anna that's there, so it's not outright hatred. It's maybe not respectful though.
Fair. Certainly not in a 2025 context. I don't know what Żuławski thinks, and frankly, I don't even know if it's germane. Yeah, right here.
Thank you. For me, it seemed like it was both him trying to make Anna suffer, while also giving her suffering like a voice, sort of. So it did feel very voyeuristic in a way, because it was so like, especially also like the nude scenes, and it was obviously those nude scenes were tied to, like, for example, the desire she had, or like the trauma she had in a marriage or whatever. But at the same time, they express her need for more, her need for fulfillment in her love life, I guess. So both.
Yeah, I love that. Very well said. Very well said. I want to just a couple quotes here, kind of in response to that question, because I think it's very interesting. You know, like I was just sort of saying that, like, I don't know what Żuławski thinks. I don't know if it's really super germane to this question, because it's sort of taken out of, it's not in the modern context. However, there's a large body of female criticism about this film that I think is very interesting. There's a wonderful critic named Kirla Janice who wrote a book called House of Psychotic Women, an autobiographical topography of female neurosis in horror and exploitation films, who reveres this film, sees this as like one of the most incredible depictions of neurosis on screen that is sort of free of judgment and is able to exist on its own terms. Canadian critic Justine Perez-Smith says, while the film takes a largely male point of view, it nonetheless stood out for me as a portrait of womanhood that I never saw expressed. It was not respectable, it was not contained, it was larger than life, literally possessed. It explored the monstrosity of womanhood in a way that didn't feel punitive in the way American slashers were. It was empathetic to the alienation experienced by many women towards their bodies. To this day, I think there are so few movies that showcase the unruliness of femininity in a way that feels so ruthless in its emotional realism, without also purely showcasing that same unruliness as purely monstrous. It's just a fascinating sort of dichotomy here. Now, open it up. What do we think about Mark? Oh, hi, Mark. We all know that drama is dictated. I'll hand it right over to you, but I want to just leave it with this. We all know drama is dictated by characters pursuing objectives. So I want to frame the conversation of Mark is, what was his objective? What did he want throughout this film? Take it away.
Yeah, looping back to Anna real quick, like, I think even the little detail of her teaching that ballet class and saying, like, nobody ever taught me how to succeed. She comes to all these issues that she faces in the film, like, on her own terms, right? And like you say, it's like free of judgment. And I think what Mark's objective is to, like, see if he can gaze into the abyss. I think there's a reason that this film resonates with even feminist critics so much, because it takes that, like, abyssal view of femininity and says, like, you know, if a man, like, really tries to understand his wife, you know, it would drive him insane. And I think a worse movie would have him. It would not have that surreal, exploding cars, car chase, shootout with the police. Like, it wouldn't go there, and it wouldn't have him. It would have him see her fuck the monster, and then, that's the end. Like, he snaps and cut to black. But this movie has him follow her through that, right? And I think that's what makes it not the punitive slasher thing, but more deeper than that. Yeah.
Nice, well said. Anybody else on Mark? Yes, back here. Yes, on Mark.
One of the things I found really interesting about the film is I don't really think he has a clear point of view. I think it's disjointed because he's a very disjointed character. Even though it's sort of told from his point of view. What else was I going to say? Lost my train of thought. Yeah, he was very elusive, and I guess you could, argue that maybe he was possessed from the get-go. It seemed like she was just possessed. We were so focused on her, so it's hard to say at what point he was possessed. It's sort of implied maybe it was later, but it could have been earlier, because his behavior throughout the movie was also very erratic and very violent, and maybe that was a symptom of the possession. I don't know. The second time watching this movie, I feel like I actually don't know a lot more.
Understandable. Understandable. I mean, I think that bringing up this term of possession is very interesting. I mean, is there an actual possession in this film? I'm not so sure. I think the term possession is simply about the need, desire, and utter futility of trying to understand the person lying next to you. The thing I think is so interesting about Mark and the pursuit of his objective is that it starts off as a need to understand and control his wife. But once he discovers the sort of where she's at in terms of murder and monster fucking, he then jumps into a whole different realm where he transitions into aiding and abetting her. He destroys the evidence in the apartment. He kills Heinrich. He goes into a place of no longer wanting to force her back into the relationship on his terms. He is willing to let go of the control of the relationship, and he's willing to go through with it on her terms just to be close to her. And in that way, the possession quality of this codependent relationship flips between the two characters. So that brings us to the monster. What the fuck was that about? Anybody? Yeah, what's up? Back here. Yes, sir. Can you pass this down?
I really liked the notion and idea, as was stated, about it being desire, but a lot of it to me was when I was thinking about the like one line where it's where she's talking about the monster being a miscarriage of luck and choice and fate. And to me, at least, the way that I had interpreted it was a lot of the lack of control that she felt when Mark is away doing his spy things, manifests, and then that is when she sort of miscarries those negative emotions and those desires, etc., into the monster, and only then, once it redevelops, does she claim that she has the divine in her again, almost as though it was a form of like reincorporation when the monster like fully develops.
Nice. Well said. Well said. A little backstory about the special effects behind the monster, because this is absolutely hilarious. So after Żuławski saw Alien, he thought, oh, this is great. So he contacts H.R. Geiger. He says, I want you to make me a monster like an alien. H.R. Geiger gets back to him and he's like, well, actually, Alien, the puppet, was designed and controlled by this Italian guy named Carlo Rambaldi. And Rambaldi had also made the aliens at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So he hires Rambaldi to make the monster. Rambaldi had been working in the United States in Hollywood productions. And so he goes to West Berlin. He's carrying the monster prototype in like 8 giant suitcases. It gets to the airport, and of course they all get searched. So you got all these West Berlin sort of guards like taking out this tentacle monster. So that's hilarious. He gets to set. He assumes that he's got like 2 weeks of camera tests to like figure out this monster. Żuławski's like, no, we shoot tomorrow. Like, get your shit together. So Rambaldi has to stay up all night working with some PAs he's never worked before. He's literally like slapping this thing together with with gaff tape, dumping fake blood on it. I think all things considered, the monster looks pretty great for that sort of perspective. Żuławski hates the monster. He's like, what is of his many gripes with the film and things that he thinks failed, he thinks that Rambaldi really dropped the ball on the monster here. Of course, the ultimate irony is that within a year, Rambaldi would be back in the United States and was the designer and operator of E.T. Following up on, I believe it was you, who was bringing up the green eyes? Yes, you bringing up the green eyes. I think when it comes to the monster, the simplest sort of explanation that I could read, and again, it's open for interpretation. Actually, Żuławski himself, I have a quote here. He says, quote, "I dare you to give me a coherent explanation of the thing. I dare myself to give a coherent explanation of evil." Well, thank you, Andre. I think it could go something along the lines of like, the monster is, in some ways, yes, it's an expression of her desire. It's an expression of their relationship in the sense that she finds it attractive, but everybody else who sees it finds it disgusting and abhorrent. The fact that we've got these doppelgangers, these green-eyed doppelgangers popping up, is the fact that these two people trapped within this codependent cycle of each other are essentially projecting, like, as much as they try to escape the relationship, they can't, because everywhere they go, they see the partner as like the ultimate object of desire. Now, speaking of coherent explanations, and we'll wind down here with this. What was that ending about, huh? That was weird. Anybody want to take a crack at that one? Nope. I'm just going to leave that one open, huh? Yeah? No one has any thoughts or feelings at all about the ending of this movie. Oh, we got two in the back. We got one person who hasn't spoke before, so I'm going to give it to her, and then J-Rod, we got coming to you next.
I will say, even as an English teacher, I found that slightly incomprehensible. My biggest question was, like, it seemed for everything crazy that happened in that movie, the pink sock guy was a weird place to land. And so I'm just wondering, like, why the emphasis on the pink socks? I don't know why that's what I'm most confused about, but I find myself intrigued.
I'm so glad you brought up the pink socks. Now, if you remember, in Mark's opening meeting with his spy bosses, they're talking about the target that he's been working on. They ask, and does the target still have pink socks? Right? So there's some sort of nexus of evil, of sort of the opposition that's associated with the pink socks. Żuławski put it at the end because he thought it was funny. He just thought it was funny. He thought it was funny to circle back on that. And it's like, I mean, listen, this guy's like making kind of like inside jokes to himself with the movie. That's just kind of how he rolls. And so by suggesting that the spy chief may have been in on the pink sock gang the whole time, he found it funny, and it leaves the rest of us feeling cold and confused. So, yeah, that's the pink socks.
I cannot begin to explain the ending, but I was just going to say throughout the movie, there's a lot to keep you grounded. I bought the monster, for example. In the very beginning, whenever they're overacting and they're doing weird choreography, when they're arguing, that does feel familiar, because whenever you're feeling manic in that moment. But Mark as a stand-in is perfect, because you follow him the whole time. Whereas in something like The Shining, whenever, is it Jack? Yeah. Jack goes off the deep end and you switch to Shelby Duvall. Yeah, you switch to her perspective at a certain point because you cannot identify with Jack anymore. With Mark, you stick with him the whole time. And up until the end, even whenever beyond when it makes sense, you're still kind of, he's your stand-in, he's your access to this world. You don't quite understand Anna, but you're still kind of with Mark, even as he starts to do wackadoo shit.
1,000%. So, this ending, I started off with a quote where Żuławski says, everything begins with an apocalypse. Well, in this film, we begin and we end with an apocalypse. Now, this ending actually was way more justified in the original script because there was a major character that was cut on set. There was supposed to be another member of this sort of bizarre love triangle. In the original script, there was a character called Abe, who was actually Anna's first husband. Supposed to be an older man who's kind of like, he keeps running into Mark and kind of taunting him. And then throughout the film, Mark keeps going to Abe and sort of asking his advice of like, what should I do about Anna? Now, This character, I think, is pretty interesting that when originally this was supposed to be funded as a French-Canadian production, they actually had the actor Sterling Hayden cast in the role of Abe, which would have been badass. But when they got to West Germany, they hired a German actor. He showed up to set drunk. He couldn't remember his lines, and so Żuławski cut him on the spot and just rewrote this character out of the script. Żuławski kind of complains about this. This is one of his other gripes about the film. He thinks the loss of Abe is detrimental to the film. You can read the script with Abe in it. I think it is so much better without Abe. Abe really sort of solidifies the misogynistic point of view. He basically encourages Mark in all of his misogyny. He goes out of his way to explain Anna when it's like so much better that Anna is left mysterious and unexplainable. Now, as Abe is spiraling out of control along with Mark, Abe begins to prophesize about a coming apocalypse. Abe also has a new wife, a young woman with who's got a hunchback and a leg in a cast. I think it was described as she has one leg shorter than the other. So, in the ending that we get, Abe has now been removed, but his wife remains in the woman at the top of the staircase who comes out with her leg in a cast and who helps the monster escape at the very end. And when we build to this final apocalypse, in the original script, justified is a strong word. It is hinted at through Abe's dialogue that this coming war and apocalypse is now descending upon them because they couldn't, they couldn't survive. So that's the kind of vibe here. Now, look, the last thing I want to mention here in sort of the backstory of this film, I know, I see your face there sort of like, I don't know about that. I'm with you. I'm doing my best to explain Żuławski's writing. I feel you, though. Okay, the last thing I want to mention here, I find it so fascinating to even talk to you guys tonight because the enduring artistic legacy of this film is one of confusion, and it was kind of present from the very beginning. This film premieres at the Cannes Film Festival, arguably the greatest film, the premier film festival in the world. Of course, it was instantly loved and loathed, like it would be. Ajani wins Best Actress, and just like the film with a city divided and a relationship divided, she's actually wins Best Actress for this film and another film that she was acting in the Cannes Film Festival. So she was technically awarded for 2 films simultaneously, which is kind of fascinating. This film then, it has a horrible time finding international distribution. The American distributor buys it, cuts nearly 40 minutes out of the film. The American distributor completely recuts the movie, destroys any semblance of continuity, even spatial awareness. He's combining different scenes together. They add in ridiculous sound effects like children laughing and like spooky synthesizers and like all this goofy shit. And American critics obviously panned it because it's already a cryptic, incomprehensible film, and they made it even more incomprehensible. They said, what American critics were like, what were these French people in Cannes thinking that this was a good movie? So that basically destroys its American reputation. They couldn't see a full cut until VHSs came over in the 80s. But speaking of VHS, it had an even worse time in the UK, where there was a moral panic around this new technology of VHS, putting smut into the hands of young people. So this film was added to a list of what they called video nasties, which included films like Cannibal Holocaust and The Driller Killer. And in 1983, Possession's distributor was actually raided, and all the copies of Possession were, ironically, possessed. Guys, it went to court. They had to go to court and publicly argue that this movie would not warp the minds of children because no one would actually have sex with a giant octopus monster. This is a quote from the court proceedings. They said this in court, quote, "No one watching this video can possibly go out and have relations with an octopus." When they finally won the case, the Daily Mail ran this headline: "Octopus sex film gets okay." I find it incredible that from the very beginning, Possession occupied this space between high art and vulgarity. It's amazing that even today, when we're offered all this kind of genre-blending A24 craziness, you can still watch this film and be as baffled and offended and excited by it as people were in 1981. Some of you in this room probably feel unsure how you feel about this movie, which is totally valid. I will leave you with this. It's a quote from a French journalist named Francois Chalet. And he said this, quote, "One enters or does not enter this film, and I pity those who refuse to cross the threshold, those who feel comfortable." Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight to see Possession. I will be back here on October 30th with The Thing, and then I'll be here monthly moving forward. So please stay tuned. Follow us at Behind the Slate Pod on Instagram for all further show announcements. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. Yes. Thank you guys. Thank you guys.